Hello. The comfort zone is the great enemy of courage and confidence, said Brian Tracy. And another quote that I would like to share with you is by Andy Stanley. Giving up something now for something better later is not a sacrifice. It's an investment. Tonight on Irresistible You, Ignite Your Passion and Purpose, we are going to talk about something's got to give, meaning what are you willing to give up? What do you have now that is not serving you? What are you doing now that's not serving you? And what are you willing to give up to become who you've always wanted to be? I'm your host, Karen Seltz. I'm delighted that you are here with me. And I am really excited about this topic because I am a big student of, well, I'm not that big, but I'm a student of Dr. Joe Dispenza. And he has a book called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And when I first heard that title, I'm like, but wait, I thought we were trying to be ourselves. Everyone says, be yourself, you can't fail. And he's saying, don't be yourself. I'm like, what does that mean? So I'm like, I was so curious. I'm like, what the heck is that? What is he talking about? But what he's saying is every state that we, like emotional state that we engage in, any emotions that we feel become addictive. Those emotions are chemicals in our body. And we get addicted to all of them, even the ones we don't want. So when it's so hard to break a pattern or a habit, we get to look at that, like, what's the payoff? And it's usually some kind of chemical, like we're like drug addicts for these chemicals. It sounds ridiculous, but think about it. If everything's going smoothly in your life and you're used to high drama and high chaos, doesn't something always happen? When you get close to a goal, if something always sabotages you, doesn't something always happen right when you're right there about to be, living the dream? I'm so close. I'm so close. And you're waiting for the other shoe to drop, and it always does. And that is because our subconscious mind is always at work, and it does what it's always done. It's on autopilot unless we prime it, unless we give it a target, unless we are vigilant and watching. So it takes some work on your part. Like most of us want like the get rich quick, or we want the painless therapy, or we want the transformation without doing the work and digging in the basement and in the attic and sweeping out all the cobwebs. But life doesn't work that way. You want something magical to happen in your life, you get to do the work. You get to sit, like the mushrooms, right? You get to sit in the shit until you develop into a beautiful fungus. That analogy worked really well. I know there's a joke about that, but I don't seem to remember it at the moment, but it's making me laugh. So hopefully you can laugh at my ridiculousness. But anyways, we get to be willing to look at the stuff we don't want to look at. And the more we're willing to do that, the bigger the payoff later. And when you can see that, when you have your vision so deeply rooted, you're like, I really want this. I want it. I'm willing to give up all the things that I thought were me in the past, because they're really not you. They're not you. I hate to break it to you. And our egos will fight for those identities that we hate. And we're like, why do I keep doing this? Well, it's the ego mind. It wants you to stay safe, and it wants you to feel separate from your higher self, separate from everybody else, separate from your higher power, God, universe, spirit, whatever it is. And it does that with many, many, many different tactics. So the first thing that I would love for you to write down, if you're a note taker, is what do I really want? What do I really want? And if you don't know what it is, what don't you want? You can write that down too. Like, here's what I have that I don't want anymore. And just write it down. And then you can say something like, well, what's the opposite of that? Or what's the absence of that look like? And then you might have a space, an opening, like, okay, I don't want this chaos anymore. Well, what's the opposite of chaos? For you, it might be peace, tranquility. It might be quiet, or it might be fun. It might be adventure. I don't know. It's different for everybody. So you get to do this work. So what do you want? And if you don't know, remember, go to what you don't want and then flip it. Okay, what is the absence of that? Or what does the opposite of that look like? So that's a fun one. Another thing is, what are your triggers? Like, what is the thing that constantly trips you up when you get close to having the thing you want? Or even if you start dreaming about that thing, something comes in, like maybe it's a voice, like, rah, 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 who do you think you are? What are those voices saying to you? What are the beliefs that are keeping you stuck? And I love this. James Wedmore says all the time, right in the middle of the word belief is the word lie. And Dr. Joe Dispenza says, beliefs are thoughts that you continue to think over and over and over until you program them in. And then you don't even think them anymore. You just believe them as fact. And they're not facts, they're beliefs. Because if they were facts, we would all have the same beliefs. We would all be billionaires if we all thought like Bill Gates. We don't have the same beliefs, right? Or we would all be homeless if we thought like the homeless person. And we're all different because we all have different beliefs, which proves that beliefs are not facts. They are quite changeable and moldable. So use that to your benefit. So what are the things that you've been believing, those thoughts, those voices from your parents or your teachers or your siblings that you keep hearing those voices and you keep playing those tracks in your mind over and over and over that you don't even think about anymore? You get to bring those up to the level of consciousness. And I call that stalking your thoughts. You get to stalk your thoughts. You get to be so vigilant that you would never, ever let one of those nasty negative thoughts invade your consciousness without your awareness. And the second you catch it, you get to celebrate. You're like, yes, I caught it. I caught it. Instead of beating yourself up for having it, you're like, yes, I caught it this time. I noticed it. Then once you notice it, you get to go back to your vision. Or another step in between is, this is what I believe to be true. There's that word belief. This is what I know to be true about myself, the universe, God, whatever are universal laws or principles that you ascribe to. And if you are a Bible reader, you could have Bible verses, and this is what is true about humans. If you are in any other spiritual tradition, like I am, you could have fundamental truths. Like for me, I believe there is no sin. The only sin is thinking I'm separate from God. So when I remember that, I'm like, oh, I'm not separate from God. It's impossible. It is impossible for me to be separate from God. And I love the analogy of me being like a foam, a piece, a little drop of foam on the edge of a wave. So the wave comes out and there's the foam, and then it goes back into the ocean, which is God, universe, source. So we're not separate. I'm like an individuation, an individual spark of the divine. And so are you. So are you. So one of the truths that I go back to is, I am as I was created. And I believe I was created innocent and perfect and precious and lovable and loving and made out of pure love. Because God loved me so much, she had to give me form. In this body is what I chose. So when you go back to those truths, it just is a way to check yourself. Like, okay, is this belief true? Is it possible that I'm not enough? No, of course not. Is it possible that I'm not lovable? No, I am as I was created. And God doesn't create crap. God, it's impossible for me to be crap. It's impossible for me to be unworthy. It's impossible for me to be unlovable. All those things, which means that the opposite is true. I am always lovable. I am always worthy, no matter what. So go back to those truths and then go to your vision. Like, okay, if I am to accomplish this vision, which I would recommend you start with ways of being. Like, what do you think that vision is going to give you? What do you want to feel and experience? For me, one of my biggest drivers is a feeling of contribution. Like, I want to make a difference in this world. I don't want to be in a vacuum. Like, I don't want to like have my little life in a vacuum and have it not have an impact on other people. I've been in the crapper. I know what it's like to be depressed and addicted and suicidal and hopeless. And I want my experience with that to shine a light on it and show other people what's possible for them, because it's not a permanent state. It's fixable, it's changeable. And, you know, you've heard the saying, like, this too shall pass. But when you're in the midst of depression, like clinical depression, it's impossible to believe that unless you see examples of people that were there. And you're like, well, if she can be better, then I can. I wasn't as bad as she was. Or, I mean, that's comparing, which I don't like, but just to say, oh my gosh, if it's possible for another human being, that gives me some glimmer of hope. What did she do? I'm going to follow her steps. I'm going to do what she did. So that is one of the reasons that I talk about my past with addiction and with depression so much, because I know I'm not alone. And I felt alone when I was in those places. I didn't know that other people had gotten past it, had normal, happy lives where they were contributing and they were abundant and they were happy and they were joyful and peaceful and connected to spirit. So that is my why. That is why I do what I do. That's why I talk about really freaking embarrassing things that most people would die if anybody knew about them. I'm sharing them. And the more I practice it, the deeper and deeper I become, and the more vulnerable I become, the more authentic I become. And I believe the greater number of people that I will impact. So I know the people that watch me have a mission. They're here to serve humanity, to uplift humanity. And I know that's you. If you're watching this, I know it's you. You have gifts inside that are like ready to come out. They're like, oh, let me out, express me. They are seeking expression through you. You are the vehicle, and you've been sent to uplift the world. So what are you willing to give up in order to do that, in order to live your divine purpose? For me, it was safety. And that was a tough one, because I grew up in a home where I was the youngest and the only girl. And my brothers would trick me a lot. So I ended up not trusting people. I thought everyone was trying to trick me. And I always wanted to look smart. I didn't want any holes to be able to be poked in my story or my logic or my intelligence. So I wouldn't speak up unless I was 100% sure I was right. I didn't look stupid. I looked smart. I looked like I knew what I was talking about. Well, starting out as an entrepreneur, I'm sorry, you have to fail. I mean, it's inevitable. Everything you touch is not going to turn to gold. You get to learn through experience. Okay, I'm going to try this thing. I'm going to do my first Facebook Live. Like, it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be clunky. So what? Then when you finish it, you got your first one out of the way. You're done. Then you can move on. Stop worrying about yourself and focus on who you're serving. Like, okay, I did that. And you're showing others, like, I'm doing this scared. I'm scared. That's the definition of courage, by the way, is feeling the fear and doing it anyway. It's like, it's not the absence of fear. It's being so committed to your vision that you're willing to risk being judged, being rejected, being spat upon. Not really. It's hard for people to spit on me when I'm behind the camera. They might want to, some of the things that come out of my mouth. You never know. But it's innate within us. We are wired to avoid rejection because in the old days, it was tied to our survival. If people didn't like us, they would put us out on an iceberg to die. You know, we had to fit in. We had to be accepted to survive. We don't have to do that anymore. We get to speak our truths. We get to be willing to stand up, to go against the grain, to use the voice that's coming through us. Yes, I feel like I'm on a soapbox right now, but I'm having fun with it. So when you think about that, for me, like I said, it was safety. I got to give up being right. I got to give up looking perfect. Got to give up not looking stupid, which is pretty much like looking good. And I got to give up like other forms of comfort. Oh, control. Oh my gosh. Yes, control. That was a big one for me. So I liked to control the narrative on what people thought of me. And I presented this lovely picture. And then behind the scenes, I was a freaking mess. I was a mess. So I was always happy and funny. And inside I was like, oh my gosh, I'm such a piece of crap. If they really knew me, everybody would reject me. I wouldn't have a single friend in the world. Well, that was the behind the scenes thoughts. And that was what occupied my mind 99.999% of the time. So it's those types of thoughts that you get to be vigilant for. And when you catch them, what do? Celebrate. You celebrate because you caught it. And then you say, okay, what's really true? You go to your universal truths. So you get to start knowing those. What are they for you? Not for me, but for you. Then what's my vision? What's my vision? What do I really want? Who am I here to be? And it could be, what do you want? But when you think about like material things, what you want, and it might be experiences, like I really want to travel. So that is an experience that requires money. So I get to confront my beliefs about money and abundance and worthiness, things like that. I digress. So when you look at the whole big picture, what do you want? What does your picture look like? Your ideal life? Now, your subconscious mind is in the habit of thinking certain thoughts, which produce certain emotions, that produce certain chemicals that go through your body instantly. Now, when you get that rush, it's like shooting up. It really is. You get like, oh, victim. You think a thought like, oh, that person cut me off. It could be that simple. That person cut me off makes you a victim. So your emotions are what? Anger, I don't know, rage, frustration, feeling sorry for yourself, feeling not good enough. It could be anything, but your body, your brain produces corresponding chemicals. And when you get those chemicals in your system, they will induce thoughts that are equal to that. You get to learn to stop that process because before you know it, it's instant. You're in this loop that keeps going because it's like thoughts produce emotions, produce chemicals that produce corresponding thoughts, emotions. So you get the picture. So the moment you catch that thought, you're like, oh, interesting. And you interrupt it. And you can have an interrupting word. You can say, cancel. Or you could just say, ha, nice try. I see you. That's one of my favorites. Like, I see you. Nice try. Because I like to play and have fun with those voices because why not? Life is meant to be enjoyed. Even when I'm beating the crap out of myself behind the scenes, I'm like, pfft. And when you laugh at something, it takes the power away because it's really laughable. Once you get used to this, you're going to see how laughable those voices are. Even if you were to write them down, you'd be like, oh my gosh, these are so ridiculous. I would never let anyone speak to me that way, but I'm doing it to myself. So I'm not going to tell you to stop it because it's below your level of consciousness right now. If you choose to stop it, it's going to take some work. It's not going to be easy. Let me say that again. It's going to take some work. And you've heard any habit you would like to change, it takes a full 21 to 28 days of consistently not doing it, interrupting it, and replacing it with something else. So figure out what you're replacing it with. So instead of I am not enough, what could you say to yourself? I'm right-sized. I don't know. You can say whatever you want. I am enough. I am enough. I am pure love. I am pure light. I am pure consciousness. I am God in the flesh. You can go on and on. You could say whatever resonates for you as truth. So find those things that are truth. And then who do you want to become? So for me, when I was first starting out as an entrepreneur, I wanted to be courageous. For me, that was more important than confidence because confidence for me is situational. Confidence to me means I've done this before. I know exactly what to do. I got this, which is great for certain situations. But what about new ones? We never know what's going to happen. What if we're doing an interview and someone asks us a question and we're like, oh shit, I don't know the answer to that. And if you're not me, you probably don't want to say, oh shit, I don't want to know the answer to that. Or I don't know the answer to that. So you get to develop courage. I would rather have courage, is what I'm saying, is it works in every situation. So when I hear a question that I don't know the answer to, my initial reaction is going to be fear. It's a physiological response that my body has. I'm like, woo! But I'm like, oh, I've been here before. I've faced a zillion situations where I've been afraid. I didn't know what to do. And now I do. So I take a breath. And for me, I'm like, I would repeat the question to buy myself some time, So I'm like, oh, so you're asking me what was my most traumatic memory of my life? Like, I don't know, could be anything. And I'm like, yeah, thanks for asking that. That's a really hard question to answer because I had so many. No, I wouldn't say that. But, you can just say something general and then go deeper. For me, I take a breath. It's okay to pause in any situation. Please pause, take a breath, connect, ask your higher power, like, what wants to be expressed through me? What would you like to express through me? And one of my things that I say often is get me out of the way and speak through me. Use me as your channel. Use me. I'm here. I am an open, empty vessel. And when you get to that state, I tell you it's magical because you're not attached. You're not attached to looking good. You're not attached to people's responses because it's not you. It's coming through you. And there's like this knowing that whatever comes through is perfect. It's absolutely perfect for the one person. Even if it's only one person that needs to hear it, it is perfect for that person. And you were chosen. You were chosen as a vessel of God to deliver that message. When you can get to that point, it's so freeing and it's beautiful because you're not attached to anything. And then that fear of being rejected, it's really just absent. I don't know what to tell you. But here's the thing, it takes practice. It's not going to happen the first time. I remember when I started coaching, I would get these messages, they would come in and I'd be like, oh gosh, I can't say that. That sounds so awful. And they would be really mean sounding things to my human ear. So I thought, well, that can't be God because God's not mean. But I was judging. I thought I knew what was best for other people. And anytime I think that now, I'm like, oh, I'm full of crap. The ego has crept in there. And anytime I think that. So when I have an opinion or when I'm like, oh, I got to say this because I'm going to look really smart and really good. I'm like, okay, I see you, ego. And then I take a breath. What would you have me do? What would you have me say? And sometimes it's nothing. Just stay there, hold space, see somebody. One time somebody called me. I was in this program called Real Love, and we used to call people to see us, to hold space for us, to love us exactly as we were. And I was in the habit of saying things back to people, and the phone disconnected. My phone, it was a long time ago, my phone overheated and disconnected. And this guy blogged about it. So he kept talking. He didn't know I was gone. And he said, I've never felt so seen and loved in my whole life, but I wasn't there. It's because I wasn't saying anything that he felt like he had this space to really express himself. So I learned a big lesson that day. I don't need to say something to be of value. I can hold space. That's a bigger value to people. So what are you willing to give up? What are the prices you are willing to pay? So you might get to pay the price of being rejected by people. You might have friends and family say to you, who the hell do you think you are? Or you might feel exposed. You might have a vulnerability hangover. You could have any number of prices. What are they? What are you willing to pay to get what you want? Are you willing to be uncomfortable every time you catch yourself with these beliefs and thoughts? Because it's really uncomfortable. The longer you go along, and you keep doing it and you're like, shoot, I should be further along than this. I mean, there's this battle that goes on when you become conscious of what's really going on in there. You're like, oh my gosh, it's a ridiculous circus in there. And remember, whenever you notice it, what do? You celebrate. You're like, yes, because it's been going on for however many years you've been alive. That battle's been going on. You are now becoming aware of it. You're becoming conscious so that you have some room to change it. Because until you're conscious of it, it's just going to keep going on right below the surface. And you're going to keep creating the same old thing that you have now. So if you like what you have now, then you don't need to do this. But if you don't, if there's any room for improvement, try it, play along. You're going to like it eventually. So it's like giving up something now. Remember that quote? Giving up something now for something better later is not a sacrifice. It is an investment. So remember that. Love yourself enough to invest in yourself, invest in your future, invest in the people that you are called to serve and to uplift. I love it. And I have one more quote for you that I want to end on. It's by Neil Donald Walsh. Life begins at the end of your comfort zone. Life begins at the end of your comfort zone. What does that mean? In our comfort zone, we're not living. We're not. We're just existing. That is not living. Thank you so much for watching Irresistible You, Ignite Your Passion and Purpose. Let me know what you thought of this episode. Leave some comments and likes. Also, if you want my free guide, which is super cool, it's 20 ways spiritual seekers stop seeking and start recognizing their own divinity so they can live their purpose now. Just go to my website, Karen Seltz, my name, .com. And you'll see free guide. Just click on it and you can download it right away and start doing the things so you can live your purpose and serve the world the way you're meant to serve them. Thank you. I will see you right here next week where I have a special guest. We're going to be talking about sex. Let's talk about sex, baby. Bye.